Can the Atlanta Braves find some consistency in the month of June? The early returns have been a little bit more of the same, but will this powerful offense heat up as the weather does? I'm Grant McCauley. He's Chris Willis. This is Battery Power TV. Before we get started, go ahead, hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you leave a like on this episode and make sure to subscribe to the Battery Power YouTube channel. Turn on those notifications. You'll get an alert every time we drop a new episode, which typically comes your way, as this one does, on a Friday. Chris, I think it's safe to say that our expectations for the 2024 Braves have become a bit of a moving target. But despite all of their scoring woes, Atlanta is virtually in the same place through 60 games as it has been in each of the prior 6 division-winning seasons. The difference, as always, is whether or not they're being chased or the ones doing the chasing, and I think we know which role they're going to be playing in 2024.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, the biggest difference. I mean, there's a lot of conception online, in particularly that the Braves are having a bad season, and I mean, you look at them; they're 10 games over 500. Yeah, the offense hasn't performed the way we expected them to, but the pitching staff's made up for it. They're having a fine season overall. I mean, they're leading the wild card race now. The only difference is the Phillies have gotten off to just an unbelievable start and are, I think them along with the Yankees are kind of setting the pace for Major League Baseball right now.
I mean, the Phillies have been impressive. You have to give them their flowers over the first couple of months. But as we know, and as we've said, and as we've seen, there's a lot that can happen over the next, 3-4 months, or at least 100 or so games that remain for both of these clubs and really for all of Major League Baseball. One thing the Braves, though, would like to put behind them moving forward is injuries, of which they've had more than their fair share this season. In the 2-game split against Boston, the Braves saw Sean Murphy take a fastball off the elbow, which swelled up to the size of a grapefruit in a matter of seconds and forced him to leave Tuesday's game. Fortunately, Murphy avoided a major injury, was back in the lineup on the opener against Washington a couple of days later. If that wasn't enough, though, Jarred Kelenic narrowly escaped a serious wrist injury when he jammed his arm diving into the turf at Fenway Park in the blowout loss on Wednesday. Kelenic a little sore, held out of the lineup on Thursday. The Braves, though, certainly did not need to lose another outfielder given their current circumstances. Murphy, of course, definitely did not want to go back on the shelf anytime soon. Chris, I would say, as far as injuries go, that's a couple of bullets dodged.
No doubt. I mean, no doubt, especially with Murphy, because the Braves had just sent down Chadwick Trump, and the only way they could have brought him back was for Murphy to go on the injured list, which would have knocked him out for another 10 days. So, a huge bullet dodge there. Hopefully he can get back in the lineup and get some rhythm. I mean, that's just been the biggest thing for him is he's just missed so much time. And then Kelenic was pretty scary. I know they said X-rays was negative. He was out of the lineup yesterday in Washington. I don't see how he's not going to be sore for a while. The way that injury happened, and that's a little disappointing for a guy that had gotten. I know it's a small sample, but had been swinging the bat much better of late. So, hopefully he can get back in there and not be too affected by the situation.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about rhythm for Murphy, who missed a couple of months and obviously wants to get back in there on a regular basis as a catcher. But for Jarred Kelenic, with the Acuna injury, it was opening up the opportunity for him to get every day at bats, something I'm sure that he was looking forward to and something that, as you mentioned, he was taking advantage of in the very early results of that. Braves, meanwhile, have rolled into the month of June and are currently working their way through this 9-game road trip that has them stopping first in Boston, now in Washington, and then next in Baltimore before coming home next week to Truist Park. We'll talk more about some of those matchups a little bit later, but one thing we've seen the past 2 seasons is this club seems to figure some things out and find its way in the month of June. Can they do that again? I think is a fair question to ask. It would certainly go a long way toward the collective feelings of Braves fans who have been watching this club go through an up and down season with a lot of those frustrations at the plate, just waiting for this lineup to find consistency that has been missing for well over a month now. In 2022, the Braves went 21-6 and reasserted themselves in the NL East race after the Mets built what seemed like, and some said, was an insurmountable lead by the time Memorial Day rolled around. That scenario feels a lot like what they're facing this year. There is possibility, but you've got to start playing better. Last season, the Braves went 21-4 in June, and that's when we started seeing, I think, the true power of this offense come to bear. I don't know if this month will produce a trilogy of success as far as June is concerned, but the Braves need to find that extended period where things begin to normalize at the plate, even out, or simply finally go their way.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. I mean, there's been a ton of bad luck in there. I mean, if you still look at the hitting metrics, they're leading the majors in average exit velocity and hard hit rate. I mean, at some point, you have to feel like that stuff's going to even out. This team still got too much talent on offense to struggle this way. But of course, that's something you and I have been saying now for over a month. So, it's just one of those things. I mean, they've just got to go out and find some rhythm. And I think it's a situation where you 1 through 9, everybody's pressing, and for good reason, because they're just not, you just weren't expecting this team to struggle to score runs. I mean, of all the laundry list of concerns we might have had coming into the season, scoring runs was not one of them.
No, it was not. In fact, it was a discussion where you said, really, the only question you had about the Braves is the question that all 30 teams have to face over the course of any season, and that is, can they avoid major injury? That really seemed to be the one hurdle for the Braves to clear. And as we found, both on the pitching side with Spencer Strider and now the offensive side with Ronald Acuna Jr., they have been faced with a couple of big injuries to two of their biggest and most important players. Atlanta's lineup has been frustratingly fickle and ranks among the middle of the pack in Major League Baseball. No matter how many times we talk about the talent on hand here, the numbers are telling a different story thus far. We know this lineup is going to have more moving parts now, particularly with leadoff being shared between Michael Harris II and Ozzy Albies, but we've also seen a lot of Austin Riley batting second. Chris, I think this could ultimately be a good thing. And I looked at the StatCast profile, and it shows the typical hard hit contact we expect from Riley. His barrels are down slightly, that percentage from 2023, but not alarmingly so. His launch angle also a little bit off as well. It feels like he's one of those guys that Brian Snitker's been referring to as being just a click away from getting on track. And it can't hurt to have him hitting in front of Marcell Ozuna right now either, considering that Ozuna has been the driving force of this offense seemingly since day one.
Yeah, Riley got a big hit yesterday's in Thursday's game against the Nationals. Put them back in front with probably the softest. I didn't look at this, but I think the softest hit that he had in the whole game.
Mm-hmm.
Hit another couple of hard hit outs. It has felt like he's just been a click away, from going on an extended run. And I think, we were saying that right before he missed the 2 weeks with the injury. So I think he's just getting back to the thing. I mean, when I look at this lineup, I still feel like coming in, I felt like Austin Riley was probably the best hitter in the lineup. Hitting him second makes a ton of sense. We're just going to have to see if they can find some consistency. I mean, I just feel like if one of these guys gets going to go along with Marcell Ozuna, maybe the rest of the lineup will fall in.
Yeah, and you don't want to be a prisoner of the moment, and you don't want to go to too many showings of small sample size theater because that will drive you absolutely crazy. And this, again, I'll stipulate, is a season in which we've seen some shows that maybe we just did not expect to be hitting Broadway. But Riley and Matt Olson were a show last year in and of themselves, a force in the Braves lineup that combined for 92 home runs. This season, that duo has provided just 12 home runs and just over 450 plate appearances. Ozuna is the only Braves hitter in double digits in home runs and leads the National League with 18 of those through 60 games. And while we're unpacking the things that haven't gone so well for the Braves offense, both individually and collectively, it's worth noting the power numbers are down across Major League Baseball in 2024. Through June 6th of last season, two teams had over 100 home runs, the Tampa Bay Rays and the Los Angeles Dodgers. The Braves had 98 home runs, the Yankees had 96. St. Louis and the Los Angeles Angels were both over 80, and 13 teams were over 70 home runs. Again, that's through June 6th of last year. Flash forward to 2024. Only two teams have over 90 home runs, the Orioles and the Yankees. Two other teams with 80-plus home runs, the Dodgers and the Astros, and only 8 clubs are over 70 home runs in total. The Braves ranking down at 16th, in case you're curious, with just the 63 homers. I'm not suggesting this is all about homers because the Braves were more than that a year ago, but I think we're seeing a downtick league-wide when it comes to slugging, and that's notable. But league-wide batting average is down from 248 a year ago to 240 this year. OPS is down 35 points, just under 700 now. Runs per game down to its second lowest mark since 2015. And again, that's across all of Major League Baseball. Chris, maybe I've just got my shovel and I'm digging and digging and digging in hopes of finding a larger explanation for the phenomenon we're watching this year. But those numbers are a bit disconcerting, and it's not just what's happening in Atlanta.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I think it's worth searching for answers, and I think once a lot of the things I've seen about this is people saying, well, just give it June because June is usually the point where it bounces back. But you can't dismiss the first 2 months when you compare them year over year either. So I mean, it feels like something has definitely changed, and you got to remember this offensive downturn has also come with a number of big name starting pitchers who are out injured, who have suffered season-ending injuries or have been at missed action, through the time. So I don't think it's just a situation where the pitching's dominant. You wonder about the baseball.
Yeah.
I've seen some situations, and it does feel like the Braves have played in a little bit cooler temperatures over the first 2 months of the season. But it's definitely going to be something to watch, as we continue through the month of June.
Yeah, and I don't think it's just the cooler temperatures and a slight breeze blowing in. I mean, even Chipper Jones mentioned this on that players only broadcast
Mhm.
not long ago that, Major League Baseball has left the door open to have itself questioned and face questions, and I think legitimate ones, about the quality control of their baseballs. Now, I didn't have the time nor the tinfoil to make a hat for this show. I just wanted to bring that up and present it because I feel like it's at least part of the discussion. Now, let's talk a little bit about run prevention. And Max Fried was at it again in Boston. He continued his incredible run of success after a couple of bad starts. If you were among those ready to write off Fried after those two bad outings to start the year, then, well, we'd like to welcome you back to the show. Fried fanned a career high 13 against the Red Sox last time out across 7 innings of 3-run ball. That line, though, I think is deceptive because Fried was completely locked in and had the Red Sox totally befuddled, if not for a nice little bloop single that scored a couple of runs in an inning where catcher's interference had extended things. I'm not sure the Red Sox would have had much luck breaking through against Fried at all. He was using his entire arsenal to great results, all 6 pitches. Yes, that's right. 6 different pitches he was using against Boston. Now, Chris Sale deservedly won the May Pitcher of the Month, but Max Fried, he was right there in lockstep and now has a 1.84 ERA, Chris, over his last 10 starts. That is what I refer to as maximum Fried.
Without a doubt. I mean, he's in Cy Young form now at this point, and just it appears to be cruising. I mean, it's almost a situation where you're surprised when he gives up a run. And the 3 runs he gave up, you mentioned one, 2 of them came on a good pitch, and the other was a home run that just snuck over the green monster and left. So, I mean, it very well could have been a scoreless outing again for Max Fried. So he's just been amazing. I mean, we expected him to be really good. I think some picked him for the Cy Young, as a candidate for the Cy Young. He's showing that. We knew it coming in, and they needed him to step up in the biggest way after Spencer Strider went down, and and he's done that.
I think you could make an argument that both Fried and Sale are top 10 starting pitchers across Major League Baseball. A pretty sound argument is that, and the numbers would back it up. And it's crazy to say that, yeah, the Braves have 2 top 10 starting pitchers in baseball, and Spencer Strider's not one of them. That's something I didn't have on the list of possibilities for 2024 either. Now, we wouldn't be able to do a show if we didn't have to talk about a Braves injury or two. And unfortunately, we have reached that portion of BPTV. Braves had to place AJ Minter on the IL with some hip inflammation. Not something that's believed to be too serious. Sounds like he's going to be ready to go and eligible to come off next week. That was the latest in a string of key players who have missed some time here in the first half. Of course, Ronald Acuna Jr. underwent his ACL repair surgery this week in Los Angeles, where he'll rehab for the next month. That's where the procedure was performed. And of course, we join everyone in sending Ronald the speedy recovery wishes to have him back on the field as soon as possible in 2025. But unfortunately, he's on the long road to recovery he knows so well. Atlanta has shuffled a few veteran players on and off the roster, particularly on the infield. The latest is Brian Anderson. You may know him from his time with the Miami Marlins, where he always seemed to be in the middle of something if the Marlins needed a big hit against the Braves for quite a few years. He spent last year in Milwaukee and was at AAA with the Mariners to start 2024. This is not a headliner type move. Obviously, there's some versatility the Braves can work with. Both infield and outfield experience for Anderson is helpful. Chris, I don't know. Maybe they finally found the guy for that role, that Swiss Army knife that they've been looking for seemingly all year.
Yeah, and when they signed him, I didn't really think about him playing in the outfield, but it was he was out there in right field yesterday's game. Hit a couple of rockets too for out, so he's fitting in. He's fitting in perfect with the rest of the roster. It seems like right now. So, this is the guy I've always had my eye on. I think he's had some injuries, and I think that led to his offensive struggles over the last few years. But this is another guy that can play on the infield, play in the outfield. It's got a good stick. Has done it before, and I think he'll relish an opportunity to play with a club that's going to be contending, probably through the end of the season. So, I felt like it was a pretty good addition, maybe the best of the bench additions that they've made, over the last few months.
Yeah, and they have made quite a few of them, and we've seen already 4 or 5 different players be called upon in that role and get at least an opportunity. But Anderson, I think, has the better of the resumes of those players that we've talked about. Other spot the Braves are hoping to shore up is the 5th spot in their rotation. Spencer Schwellenbach had mixed results in his first 2 major league starts, looked really good against Washington, I thought, made a mistake. It was a little bit tougher against the Boston Red Sox, obviously, as he got hit around, but it wasn't because of a lack of stuff. I still think there's a lot there, and it looks like he's in line for another opportunity, which would come against the Baltimore Orioles, which would be the toughest test to date, obviously, for the 24-year-old as well. But it is worth noting that Hurston Waldrop was promoted to Gwinnett a week ago. He fanned a career-high 11 batters in his AAA debut. if he keeps doing what he's done in 2024, I can't imagine, Chris, that the Braves would be hesitant to call upon their 2023 first rounder to help out with things as they look for answers to close out their rotation.
Yeah, I know the numbers are a little ugly for Spencer Schwellenbach, but I've been kind of impressed by the way he's pitched. He's not, he's not a guy that's going out there and walking 3 or 4, 5 guys in an outing. He's pounding strike zone, probably throwing a little too many strikes, honestly.
Yeah.
When it comes right down to it, it looks like he's going to stick in the rotation for another turn. But no, I think we've seen this team be, you can look at Schwellenbach as an example for how this team's willing to be aggressive in promoting guys. Schwellenbach skip AAA altogether. I think it's only a matter of time before we see Hurston Waldrop. And, they're just kind of throwing a lot of numbers at that fifth starter spot. And, hopefully we'll see, somebody take that opportunity and run with it.
Yeah, if you've got the talent, the opportunity can be there. And we saw that with 20-year-old AJ Smith-Shawver a year ago. The Braves are not afraid to make that perhaps aggressive promotion in the eyes of many. Now, as far as this road trip is concerned, Atlanta has 3 games left with the Nationals this weekend. They're throwing Chris Sale, Max Fried, and Charlie Morton. We talked about the offense plenty, but if you're lining up with a chance to win a 4-game set, Atlanta is throwing the 4 starting pitchers that they want to get the job done after Reynaldo Lopez tossed the opener. Braves would very much like to get back at the Nats for taking 3 out of 4 at Truist Park not long ago. When the Braves finish up in Washington, they'll have an even bigger test waiting. Atlanta has a 3-game set against the Baltimore Orioles, one of the best teams in baseball, but a club staring up in the standings at the Yankees in the AL East. One of the best records in baseball. The O's, much like the Braves, though, have some ground to make up. So maybe it doesn't look quite the same in terms of the overall numbers, but the story is remarkably similar for those two teams.
Yeah, really looking forward to that series, because when those two teams, Braves and the Orioles, played last season, those games were great. I mean, they were like playoff matchups early on. I think there were a couple of one-run games in there, and just you were kind of hanging on your teeth for a just for a regular season matchup in June. So a little bit of hype. It'd be nice to see the Orioles, because that's a talented young roster that's probably going to be good for a long time.
Yeah, certainly looks like it. And it seems like that pipeline is not going to be slowing down anytime soon. They've got a lot of prospects still coming up to the big leagues from their AAA system. And it appears that they have emerged from their rebuild with the players that they need internally to make some noise in a very, very tough division. So it will be an interesting series for sure. That brings us to the end of another episode of BPTV. Make sure you hit that subscribe button right here on the Battery Power YouTube channel. Turn on those notifications so you get that alert every time we drop a new episode. Thanks again for riding along with us. For Chris Willis, I'm Grant McCauley. We will catch you next time. And until then, so long, Braves Country.